especially if you're going to set up the application in the production environment. So what are the main objectives? So that is special class which we'll discuss that. But anyway, network, we have some more comments. I will conclude that on Monday. But yesterday, which we are understanding the networking important concepts about the IP address understanding. If you see this IP address, what is the subnet, what is the broadcasting channel, what is the device ID in that, and how to view the list of all the IP addresses, and what are the different classes are available in the IP. So class-based domain and classless domain. Now the latest model, everything classless inter-domain routing. Yeah, those concepts we are understanding that, but those classless inter-domain, how it is going to helping that in the real time. So to understand that concept, now let's move into this special class, that is a high availability architecture. Yeah, this is one basic understanding required if you are moving to the cloud or if you are moving to the next the DevOps process models. The today's is the important class. If you how much you understand today and how do you remember these concepts in the next further running classes, that much the help you will be having that easily to understand it. Yeah, let's move into that. The client and server architecture. What is the client and server architecture? What is that application and application components? And if you are designing that application in the real time, what are the main objectives? So why do we need the networks? Or why do we need that? Sometimes we are talking about the firewall. Yes, whenever we are installing the HTTP service, the voice level, some firewalls are blocking, and we are enabling that HTTP service, and we are using that. Yeah, the security. Security is also one of the important thing if you are planning to host the application. Yeah, let me move into that. The client and server architecture with the high availability. So before starting this client and server architecture, first let's talk it that suppose in our browser, whenever we are hitting that riseandshine-technologies.com or google.com or facebook.com, what exactly is going to happen that? Directly about our request will be routed directly to the backend server, that is riseandshine-technologies.com server or Google server. Let's try to understand that concept. Yes, whenever we hit in the browser, the URL, what exactly is happening that? But first of all, if you're going to use that, the domain, suppose let's talk at the riseandshine-technologies.com, but backend application has to be set up this, right? The server has to be set up.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, let's assume that we have taken that virtual machine, like a background machine itself, or that can be launched on the cloud, that is AWS or Azure, wherever you have, doesn't matter that. Wherever you have, doesn't matter that, but virtual machine is required. As we're trying to understand that any machine or a device, if you talk it, it is going to have its IP address as one unique identity in that network on the basis of the subnet. As we are talking that any virtual machine that contains IP address, that has to be identified with IP address or host name. Host names and all these things which we use it within the networks, but outside of the network, they're all not going to help in that. So main network communication TCP protocol is using is nothing but IP address is important. Yeah. So please mute. Okay, cool. Yeah, so you have taken one virtual machine which is having that IP address and with the host name, some rnsec1.com. But once the machine is available, we need to host the application, right? So the transitiontechnologies.com application, whatever we are talking that application to host it, we need to use some servers for it, like Apache server, which we are talking that, like this app servers, the Tomcat or WebLogic, QSPhere, we need to use it one of the server. So let's assume that you have installed this server, that is Tomcat, which is running on the port 8080. But Tomcat server setting up that's on this virtual machine is not enough, but we need to deploy the application also. So application which is implemented by the development team. So we need to take that application and we need to host on the Tomcat. And Tomcat is a service which is running on this virtual machine. So if I would like to access this application, now how I can access this? Even that in the two last classes, we are trying to understand Apache once it is ready. Apache which is running on the port 80. If it is a Tomcat which is running on the port 8080. But access points are all the same thing, right? How do we access this application once it is hosted on the server is the same approach. That is URL is required. But if URL, if we talk it, so what is the approach we have? Protocol, we need to have it. So this application on which machine it is running, that IP address required. And in this machine, on which service it is running. Is it running on the Tomcat? Is it running on the Apache? Is it running on Nginx? It is running on the WebLogic? That port is required. Port is going to decide about that, routing that request to particular service. IP address is machine level communication. Within that machine, server or service, how do we access it? That is a port. So protocol required. That is the virtual machine IP required, on which machine that service is running. And then colon port. So is it running on the Tomcat? Then Tomcat port. If it is running on the Apache, Apache port. Yes, on which server it is running, the server port. And finally, application name. That is a / app name. If it is RNS, RNS is the app name. So we say that context name of that application. Suppose in this Tomcat, I can deploy multiple applications or not? Yes, we can deploy.
We can. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can deploy multiple applications. App 1, App 2, App 3. But normally we don't prefer it. But some development or testing environments, to save the resource cost and all the stuff, we use the one server running for the development application and as well as testing application. But in the live environment, we don't see that running in the single server, multiple applications. But if it is required, we can do that. So finally, application name. So how we are going to access is, so first machine level communication, that is IP address. Then service level communication, that is a port. Then within the service, then application name. Which application that you want to access, that application name. So these are all the three main inputs that is required if you would like to access the application. Suppose as per this server and service point of view, URL, if you construct it, HTTP is a protocol, and IP address, the system IP address, some XYZ like a 192.168.1.1, and one which port it is running, that 8080, and application name, just think about RNS. If you hit that, then you can access this application. But are we going to give this URL? Are we going to access the application like this with this URL? No, right? You are going to access with the risenshinetechnologies.com.
Correct.
If I give like this URL, boss, use it to my application access with this URL, then you need to manage it one notepad for it, right? Wherever you go, it has to follow the notepad. If you'd like to access the risenshinetechnologies.com, then you need to copy this URL and paste it in the browser and access it. But you cannot remember this URL. So for that point of view, what is the concept that is available is DNS registration. So backend, this is my server, and this is the port and all the thing. But end user, whenever I'm giving that, I'm not giving directly my IP address and port number. So we are going to register this server IP address or the port numbers which you have in our DNS server, DNS, yes, service. That is ornester.com or horizonsentechnologies.com or gmail.com or any provider that he is having that website is nothing but this is the approach. Backend he is having the server and the service with application which is hosted, but front end to the users he is giving that the domain name. So whenever we hit it that, so suppose we are using the browser in our Windows system, but about our system is also having its specific IP address, right? Yes,
Yes,
yesterday
yes, yes.
correct. Yeah, yesterday we are observing that what is my IP. If I just hit it, yes, it is giving us my IP address, public IP address. So client is also having that IP address and server is also having that IP address. Where it is required to route into that, yes, that is also the public required. But directly we don't share that these IP addresses to the clients. We map it with the DNS. That is a mapping. With this, anyone hits this with this name, then backend, this is the IP address which is mapped. Mapping. That is where do we do that? That is in the DNS service. We will talk it. These are all things in the cloud. We'll see the practically. The AWS, whenever we are going to talk it. Yes, all these things we are going to talk it practically. But know these points. Very, very important. Okay, so if the client has used this browser, and before that, he should have internet, right? Otherwise, how he can access this, or how do we access this application?
Client server. Correct.
Yeah, network has to be enabled. What is the internet? Internet is a network of networks. So if this is contain the public IP address, yes, I can access it from anywhere. But whether you are allowing it or not, that is about your security concerns, which you can define it. But if you have the public IP address, we can access that. If it is a private IP address, we cannot. From external networks, we cannot access. Only within network, we can access it. But if you are publishing this application is nothing but you need to use the public IP for it. Public mechanism required. But public IP is where we define that we don't directly share it to the client. We share it through the domain name mapping. Okay, first of all, if I would like to access this application, yes, I need to have the internet. Okay, net is connected. Internet, which is, yes, networks of the networks which can be connected through the internet. Okay, whenever I hit that, this ornster.com in my client machine that is in the browser, what's going to happen that? Ornster.com is over the internet, it is going to connect it to this server? No, it doesn't do. So whenever we hit that, this horizonsentechnologies.com or google.com or any site, any website URL, whenever we hit in the browser, immediately about our request is not submitting to the backend, that server. Just a minute. Yeah, so as we are understanding that the request and response model, how it is working this on the internet. Yes, like whenever we hit that the URL, what exactly is going to happen? This is immediately it is not going to send to the backend, the server. That is, if it is the google.com, if you hit it, it doesn't directly submit to the Google server. What's going to happen is it is going to route about our request to the DNS because it has to get that IP address of this DNS name, right? So whenever it is working on the network, it is not going to work it with that these naming concepts. Domain name doesn't work it directly on the TCP layer. So IP address mechanism it is required. So what's going to happen this is it is going to route to the DNS server. Okay, you are requesting the rns.com. It is going to search it in the records for this rns.com. What is that IP address which is mapped? That IP address will be written back to the our system. Then once this IP is available over the net with the routers or switches, which is going to use it and identifying the network to which network it has to be routed on the basis of, as we are talking about it, subnet concepts. Identifying the network ID and the device ID. Yeah, with the network ID through the routers that will be routed to the particular network, and within the network using the device ID to that particular device it will be routed. Yeah, once this system is received, and next it is going to use the port. Port is a service, and then application name, yes, which application, then that application will be returned back to the client. So this is actual background process. Whenever we hit the URL in the browser, what exactly is happening is this is the stuff. If the DNS is not there, then it doesn't know that to where it has to be routed. Or you need to use it directly this IP address. Is it clear at this point? So whenever we are working with the troubleshooting activities, so sometimes what is the issues we see that or we hear from the client is hitting that URL, but he is not able to access the application. But whenever we check it from the back end, everything is working successfully. About our server and other users are able to access that application, but some clients are not able to access this application. Then we need to check it from which network they are accessing about it. That network, is it allowing it or not? Or they have the proper the network to access it. So these points that should be verified. But if it is about all the users are getting the problem, then this is about our service issue. If some portion or area of the people are not able to access it, some geolocation based, or some particular client he is facing that issues, then that client side we need to think it of it. So from which network he is accessing, that's that network, is it allowing it or not? That is security groups and firewalls. We have the concepts there. We can check it. How do we work with that? We'll come back to that the practically. But yes, so these concepts. Yes, next what we are going to look into that. Why we are learning this networking concepts. The why the why the networks are required for the DevOps engineer. Yes, IP address. If you see this, you should be able to understand with the subnet mask, broadcasting channel, how many devices that you can have it in that, and what is the network ID, what is the device ID. All those points are the very important for us. And sometimes if the router is down, suppose in our home network, if the Wi-Fi is down, but from the internet service provider we are getting the internet, but about our Wi-Fi device is down, then we don't get the internet, right?
Yes, correct.
The same thing here also. So over the network, if any one of the router is not reachable, then that client cannot access the application. But how do you trace it? All my routers are working and everything that is reachable to the destination server or not. So that is next to some commands we are going to learn it. That is on the Monday we will look into that networking commands. That is we have the DNS commands or the host commands or the DQ commands. Yeah, so this is a basic the flow of execution understanding between the client and server. So this backend we say the server and this is the client side. Client and server architecture. But this server here we are talking this only one server. But if this service is down or if the server is down, then this is not a high availability, right? So that is how do we come back? We'll come back. I mean, how do we define that high availability solution? The designing approaches. That's we'll come back to that. Yeah, client and server architecture. Yes, as we are understanding, client request a resource and the server respond with that resource. A server may serve multiple clients at the same time. This is important. A server can serve multiple request or multiple client related requests at the same time. That is the load on the server. Maybe you are accessing or I am also accessing. N number of users are accessing that. But the server has to handle all the requests. But whenever we are designing this, the client and server architecture, we have the two different structures. So one is a two-tier architecture and the second one is three-tier or n-tier we will call it. Three-tier or n-tier client and server architecture. N for number. The two-tier architecture, nobody using that. The only this is for the static content of application, which you are observing that HTTP server. Browser to the directly to the HTTP server. HTTP server contains static content, HTML files or PDF files or JPG files. So client request for the PDF file and PDF file will be loaded. That's all. There is no transaction involved with the backend. Yeah, client request over the internet and Apache server or Nginx server. These are the best examples for that two-tier architecture. Apache already we discussed. So Apache, suppose if I'm requesting welcome.html. Okay, server receives and welcome.html file, is it available in the where HTML it is going to set it, and if it is available it returns back to that. Straightforward. Client server architecture. This is for the static content of application that's supporting that. But in the real time, the most of the domains, if you just observe that, telecom domain, healthcare domain, insurance domain, banking domains, education domains. So these are all almost like enterprise applications. They're all not like a static content of application, simple, give the request and get the file. No, not like that. So these kind of domain application, like enterprise applications, we don't use it this architecture. But when do we use it this? Suppose I need to prepare my photo album. Or we have the yes, institute. Now about our application is dynamic content. I cannot say the residential technologies is the static content of application. But say some of the institutes, like they just posted their course curriculum. But we don't see this any login options, logout options. We just see that what are the courses and course curriculum, which we can see that. Our college brochures, our hotel menus, the hotel, some of their application, they just give that the menu options or what are the like items they have, just give it, but they don't have that online transaction something. Just to only view in the content. So those kind of applications, we can go ahead with this two-tier architecture of application. Yeah, these are all request and response where some the advantages, disadvantages. We don't need to focus much on the two-tier, not required. Three-tier or n-tier, this is important. So between the client and to the database is one more layer has come up that. Before we are understanding client and server, yes, this is, but here we are expecting some backend transactions to handle it or transaction data to store it. We need to use it some DB servers or maybe reporting servers or analytics, that is streaming the data to that other backend components. Or maybe you need to send the email notification, SMTP server is required. Or maybe you need to send that SMS message. Then some messaging systems you need to use it. So there are the backend components on the base of application. Suppose these days, if you just observe that any functionality we are doing that, at least SMTP, sending the email, or mobile notifications, OTP mechanisms. So multiple backend systems required to communicate it. So database to store the data, messaging systems to send the message. So that's why we say that it is not just only three tier, like a client to that middleware to database. Not only that, maybe middleware, once the transaction complete, it has to use it SMTP server to send the email. Or maybe it has to use the messaging channel to send that SMS message to the users. Or maybe it is required to update that information to the reporting servers. Yeah, the backend multiple integrations required. That's we say that entire, maybe 4 layers, 5 layers, 6 layers. Client to the middleware to database. But what is the need of the database? Suppose technologies.com application, if you just talk it. So we have that users and groups and the courses assigning that courses list. In that courses storing the videos. We need to have the storage system or not? Yeah, that application, all the users transaction data. That will be, I mean, where do we store that application transaction data? We have another type like structured or unstructured, that is later story, but you need to use the database servers. But request is received. Suppose you are accessing the course. So and so course you are accessing is nothing but that course related, all the data it has to fetch it and it has to display to the user. But who is processing this request? That is a middleware component. Understanding about your request. Okay, you are requested for particular course. Understanding that course and course information getting from the database and displaying that information to the user. So this is the, we say that middleware. On the base of the request which is received from the client, it is analyzing that request, and for that request, whatever the process that is required, it is going to executing, communicating with the backend systems and processing this request and constructing the response data and giving the response back to the client. So this is a three-tier architecture. In this three-tier architecture, middleware component is playing the request, but this is just a processor, right? Identify the request and interact with the backend communication and construct that the response object and give that response back to the client. This is just a processor, but actual data in the backend database. Yeah, good. So these are all important points before going to work with that. So like the cloud or next DevOps process model, we are going to take it this real-time application, which is having the three-tier architecture. Front-end layer, middleware layer, backend database complete, which contains one application. We are going to take it and we are going to talk it. That's one on the AWS infrastructure to set up this with the DNS onwards to the backend high availability architecture. That is slowly one by one will come back. But this architecture, these keywords, these terminologies, and these process models, that is client to the server, there is a middleware to the database, but not only just database, maybe SMTP servers or messaging servers. There is a queue system, or maybe reporting servers. Yeah, it has a 3 layers, namely client, application, and data layer. The client layer is the one that requests the information. In this case, it could be the GUI or web interface. That is about our browser. But these days, if we just observe that interfaces point of view, we have the mobile interface, mobile-based applications, or browser-based interaction, or device-based interactions. Suppose if you go to the ATM, you are asking that you are performing the transaction is nothing but either withdrawing that amount or depositing amount, but interface is the different, right? Or you can sit in home and you can use it about your browser, and you can do that, transferring that amount. So interfaces are the different, but yes, on the base of the interfaces, the middleware is going to handling that. But finally, database is only one. About your data, that entire account to data is available only in the single database, right? It should not have that ATM data is different and online my account details are the different. No, it should not be like that, right? Yeah, client, that could be any interface, but middleware component, all these interfaces are communicating with the middleware layers, and middleware layer is going to handling that data layer. Which interface that request is receiving doesn't matter, that application layer and data layers are going to play important role. But as a client and services they provided, they are giving the different approaches. Yes, you can use it mobile app, or you can use it the browsers, or you can use it some device-based communications. Yeah, advantages of the 3 tier, the dividing that the transactions into different layers. Yeah, the 3 tier structure provides much better service and the fast performance. We should not say the fast performance, that is as advantage, because suppose 2 tier, if you just observe that, it will be very fast, right? A request is received to the server, and here itself the resource is available, immediately it is giving the response back. There is no third layer is involved. Third layer is involved is nothing but that network bandwidth which is required to connect to third layer. We are saving that here the time. So this is somewhat quite fast. But a 3-layer architecture. So receive this middleware server, identify the type of request, whether it is required to perform the SMTP activity, whether it is required to perform the database activity, whether it is required to perform the messaging activity. So it has to be identified. And it has to forward to the backend component. Backend component is nothing but network required again. Maybe these are all in the different networks, and middleware is in the different networks. That network bandwidth, definitely that is going to have the impact on the request and response times of the client. But main advantage which we can say that is, the structure can be scaled according to requirements without any problem. Yes, middleware component is having the high load, then we can do that extra, more servers taking that and handling the requests. Our database is having that per second the transactions heavily, then we can think about that the database, the extending about it. Yes, which layer is having the load, that layer we can do that, or we can apply the scalability features. That is kind of the request and responses you are splitting into the different layers to handle the failovers, to handle the load distributions. Yeah, data security is much provided. And disadvantages is it is quite complex due to advanced features. Yes, integration some challenge, network-based communication, security-based data transmitting between the layers. These are all some challenges. Are you clear about this point? the client and server architecture, and what are the different methodologies are available to design client and server architectures. But who will decide that architecture is? That is application team. We don't mind it. I mean, we don't involve in that architecture. Maybe they come up with this three-tier architecture on the basis of the client enterprise application requirement. Application side architects are going to involve in that, deciding about it, how many layers that is required, the request and response process that. And if it is the database, which database is required? If it is the middleware, which middleware server is required? Are messaging systems required or not? That is application requirement. Suppose in the technologies.com, whenever you do that any course or starting or something, you don't get that any mobile message, but you will get that email notification. Everyone, are you getting the email notifications from the application? If you start any new course, but everyday course you are accessing this, you don't get it. But whenever you start the course, you will get the notification, right? Especially email. But we didn't define any messaging. So that is on the basis of application. How do you want to give it to the client? What about others? No one is responding that. You are not going to get the notifications.
Yes, sir. We are getting notification when we are starting the course.
Yeah.
I able to get it.
Yes. Yeah, everyone today in silent mode. So Saturday, right? Okay. But anyway, interesting topic. We're
Nothing
not.
like that, sir.
Oh, yeah, I'm just getting this. Okay, anyway, that's an interesting topic, but we are not talking about that, the commands and all this stuff. But these concepts are the very, very important as engineer to understand it, IT engineer to understand it. Before moving to the cloud and models, yes, all these are all inputs. Yeah, now let's move into that application resources. Suppose, okay, the technologies.com itself, if we take it that, if you'd like to implement that application functionalities about the home page, about the courses, about the groups, about the users management. But first of all, we need to choose the technology for it, right? Yes. Which programming language is required? Yes, if you're planning, yes, any project is received to the organization is nothing but. So first understanding the functionality of application, functionality of that application, login page, sign up options. And then once you sign it, what does the home page should contain? And what is the look and feel of it? What is the data that you want to display that? What are the menu options? Settings options? Yes, all that's the functionality that is required to identify, and that functionality to implement it, they go for deciding about it, programming language. But what are the programming languages are available in the market? Yes, we have the Java JDE. Officially, we say this Oracle, but these Java technologies are available from the different providers. IBM, they have their own Java. But main initially is Sun Microsystems. But Sun Microsystems that is acquired by that Oracle team. Now officially we say that Java JDE is Oracle. And we have the PHP based. PHP is another programming language. .NET from the Microsoft, Python, Ruby, Node.js. Yeah, so there are the different programming languages which are available in the market. SQL is not the programming language, that is a database site. But here we are talking that functionalities to implement it, first a programming language required. That is interfaces, user interfaces, that is the browser based or device based or mobile application, that is a programming language. Suppose if I need that iOS based application, yes, they need to use that iOS software to design that application. Yeah, the programming languages that is required to implement the functionalities. But programming language, can we host it directly to the user? Can we give it directly to the user once functionality has been implemented? No, we cannot. We cannot directly give the language to the end users. So once the functionality has been implemented on the basis of the user request, that is, if he's suppose you are requesting for the courses, then it has to list that the courses, or if you are requesting that the groups, it has to list the all the groups which you belong to that. But who is understanding this request and who is executing these programs? That is middleware server is required. As we're talking about the Tomcat or the WebLogic or the WebSphere or the JBoss or Microsoft IaaS servers. So there are the different servers on the base of the programming language. These middleware servers will be identified. But who will decide that the programming language, and for that programming language, which middleware server is required? That is application team and application architects, they come into the picture. Sorry. Okay, so once, but these are all having the correlation or not? Yes, they're all having the dependency one to each other. Suppose if I choose that a .NET programming language for my application, what is the middleware server I need to use it? I need to use it only IaaS server. I cannot take it the Tomcat to deploy .NET application. We cannot. Tomcat doesn't know that how do we run the .NET application. Like that, WebLogic or WebSphere or the JBoss, these servers, they know that only Java J2E. They don't know that Python. How do we run it the Python on the web? Like, no, you cannot deploy the Python application taking and deploying on the WebLogic. So these are all the programming dependencies. So programming is decided is nothing but they need to choose the server for it. Supported servers. So Python, it can be run it on the Apache. Or especially PHP, yes, the Apache, they will use it that. Or Python is having its own internal frameworks to run it that applications. Yeah, these two are having the correlation, dependencies. These are all the tightly coupled. So if I choose it Java, then I need to go for only Java based servers. Or if I choose it .NET, I need to use it only IaaS. I cannot use it other servers. So that's why we say that they're all the tightly coupled. And next one is database required. So once the functionality has been implemented using the programming language, this programming application we deploy on the server. But middleware server has to load the data or store the data to the backend databases. Yes, you can use it Oracle database, IBM DB2 or MySQL or MS SQL or Sybase. There are all the different databases are available in the market. So there are the three main components that will be decided when our new application is received to that project. New project is starting is nothing but there are the minimum components which are required for that application. But not only that, infrastructure is required for this or not. That is the storages, networks, operating system. Yes, on which operating system does do you want to run these servers? Or in which operating system do you want to run the database? Yeah, OS is required. But the servers you are running is nothing but the servers are going to consume that. As we are talking that the servers are the processes. Process is going to consume the CPU utilization, memory utilization, disk utilization is required, networks required. So backend, all these components, storage is required, networks required. Yeah, all these components that is required. But these layers, we say that infra layer. Yeah, if you're talking that which OS is required, what is the amount of the CPU, what is the amount of the RAM, what is the capacity of the processor, network optimizer required or not, IO optimizer required or not, that is disk IO, and how much storage that is required. Is it required the network internal or external? So if you just talk at all these points, we say that infrastructure. But once infra is available, if you'd like to deploy that application, then we need to have the platform. So Java application to run it, I need to have the Java environment. A .NET application to run it, .NET environment. We need to set up all the tools which are required to run that application. We need to install these servers as we are talking that Apache installation, how to start it, stop it, how to configure it, or how do you deploy that application on that Apache like that, which server you are going to use it, that server installation mechanisms, that server configurations, that server starting stopping approaches, that server deployment operations. Yeah, finally application has to be deployed on the servers. But before that, the server has to be set up. And the servers has to be integrated with the databases. But before integrating with the database should be up and running. And database should be ready with the schema. That is the tables, procedures, views, functions, whatever it is required for this application. All that has to be set up in the database. So if you're doing these operations like setting up the middleware servers or a databases installation, database configuration, schemas loading, or application deployment on the middleware servers. But who will provide the schemas? Who will provide the application? That is app team and the databases point of view. Application team, mostly they come up with that. That's why we need to always communicate with the development team and testing teams. And infra to manage it, yes, infrastructure teams, operation engineers. We are the collaborators, team collaborators. But in that infra teams, we are going to communicate with that. Platforms to configure the platform teams, we need to communicate with that. That is application teams or testing teams. Yes, if you're doing some testing environment, yes, you need to was testing team. So let me know that what is about your requirement. About the database point of view, the middleware servers point of view. Yes, as per their requirement, we need to configure that. The number of servers. Are you following the points?
Yes.
Yeah, if we set up the infra and a platform, and once all are ready and application has been deployed on the middleware servers and application schema is loaded on the database, then about your application is ready. Application is nothing but that software is ready. Rise and Shine Technologies, that's the app or software is ready. If I do that, all these things in the background, then we can log in it and we can create accounts and we can log in it and we can access the courses. That is software using that through online. So that's we say that software as a service. Suppose if I would like to share the documents to all of you, or I would like to share my documents to multiple devices, then we have the ready-made softwares, right? Like I can register, I can create account with a Dropbox, and I can share that the files to my multiple devices, or I can use it the Google Drive. So they're all ready-made softwares. I don't need to set up all these things infra and application to share my documents. So that is a ready-made software is available. So if you overall consider about it, on the base of the requirement, if it is having about our own application, then that application infra setting up that, platform setting up that, then application deployment. Yes, if you do all these activities, then about your application is ready. Or sometimes I don't want to struggle with that. I don't know that infra, how to set up that. But I have my application and I need this platform. Yeah, we have some providers who are providing the ready-made platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, or software as a service. Yeah, the next, whenever we start the cloud, we are going to talk it all these keywords. But whenever we talk it infrastructure as a service, that means you are going to get it. Yeah. So we are going to get it, the ready-made, I mean, how much storage that is required. Suppose I need that something 500 terabytes of the storage that is required. Yes, you can get it within the minutes. Or if I need the networks, that's public networks or the private networks. Yes, within the minutes you can create it that. Or I need that operating system, which is Windows or the Linux based. Now we are using the background virtual machine in our own laptop. That means the RAM, CPU, storage, everything from about your laptop, about your own infrastructure you are using. That is about your own data center. Now we can say that about your own data center you are using to launch it about your virtual machine. But your system is having only 8 GB, but you need to launch the system with 32 GB. Then can you use it about your data center? Can you use it about your laptop? You cannot, right? Now what do you need to do? You need to plan it to buy this 32 GB capacity of the system. Anyway, that is interesting concept. In the cloud, we'll come back. So how to get it infrastructure ready-made from the cloud providers, or how to get it ready-made platforms if you deploy about your applications, or how to get it ready-made softwares like Google Drive or Dropbox or mail server like Office 365. That is software as a service. They are giving that. That means background, they are managing all these things. Suppose if I'm using a Dropbox is nothing but Dropbox, they have set up the background, the infra. Background, they are managing the middleware servers, database servers. But we don't need all the things, how they are managing that. We just log in it and we'll just upload that to the document and we will use it that. So that is the beauty of this services model. Infrastructure as a service or the platform as a service or software as a services. But instead of depending on these services is like, I mean, yeah, before that, if you are talking about one application is up and running is ultimate, just remember that that is going to use the OSs, storages, networks, programming language required, middleware servers required, databases required. All these components together, if we do that, and if you host that application successfully on the middleware and the data you are managing successfully in the database, about your application is ready. So my point here it is, we'll come back. Those services, how to get it from the cloud provider ready-made, we'll come back later. But first of all, on-premises model, if you try to understand it, if you'd like to launch one website, first you need to have that, the infra, then you need to identify the programming language, middleware server, database servers, and you need to set up all those things. And once those are ready, take that application which is given by that development team and deploy that on these servers and get ready of the application. So they're all the important components to host one website. Are you clear about this components of that application?
Clear,
They're
sir.
all, yeah, they're all, we can say application resources. We always talk at website. But website is running is nothing but backend all these resources that I have been set up that. But maybe you are going to use it directly, or maybe you are going to use it indirectly, but these are all the things are there. There are things that's required. Even if you are opening that Word document in our Windows operating system, just think of it. Background, it is using that the OS, it is using that the CPU, it is using that the memory, it is using the disk. And that Word document which you are using that is already implemented, right? Microsoft team, they have implemented that functionality. And they have given that software to you, which you have installed on that operating system. That is running as one process. Process running is nothing but that is going to have it one unique ID. That is a process ID. Process ID is going to consume the CPUs, memories, and it is on the priorities. Yeah, all these points are the important, but how the market is moving this to the next generation is now you don't need to struggle that having about our own operating system or about our own data centers or about our own databases. We can get it all these things on the rent based. That is a cloud. Yeah, before this 10 years, everything about our own infrastructure. But from 10 years onward, slowly that the infra is moving, that's rent-based infra. That means if I need the 10 machines, take it for the rent and use it. And whenever the usage is done, release back that to the provider who is giving that those resources to you. Yes, that is a moving to the cloud. Okay, good. So that's cloud advantages and the disadvantages. We'll talk it later. But first, today, get it about it. So how the client and server architecture and what are the different models are available. That is a 2-tier or 3-tier or n-tier. But all these layers, if you'd like to define it, yes, what are the resources required? That is infra resources, platform resources, and finally application which is implemented by the application team, which contain the functionality. These are all the components. Whether you are running on the on-premises environment or whether you are running on the cloud environment, doesn't matter. But these are all the basic things which we should understand that. But if you move it to the cloud, everything ready-made. That means easy way to manage it. But if you are having about your own, suppose if you are using about your own laptop, then launching the virtual machine, you need to have the sufficient memory, sufficient RAM, disk space. If you don't have, then you need to plan it, investment on it, right? That means you need to have the sufficient money for it. That means investment, capital expenditure. That is investment required. If it is about your own data center. Okay, so there are the resources that is required. If you are planning to host that application is nothing but think it all these points. Next, another important, okay, application now what we are understanding is in this architecture. So we are talking this one machine and in this machine, one server. And in that server, application is hosted. But can we say this a single host on single service? Is it a high availability? So it is not a high availability. What's going to happen that even if the Tomcat is down because of some issues, it is down. Or maybe virtual machine is down. Then whatever the URL which you are using, that URL is not available, right? Yeah, so if you are moving this application to the production, these are all some more important points which we need to consider about it. That is a high availability. I mean, 24/7 application must be available. Background, how we are going to manage it doesn't matter. It client, whenever he is accessing that application, see, whenever you are trying to access the risenshine-technologies.com, it should be available, right? Whether you would like to access afternoon or the specific time on the basis of about your availability, whenever you would like to use it, yes, it should be available. Yeah, availability of that application is important. But if you're talking about high availability, but backend, if something failure is happened, how do you handle the failures? Yeah, we cannot predict it. Maybe sometimes yes, the power is off. If the power is off, is nothing but maybe if I may have the backup of the power, that's fine. If the backup is not there, my system is down. Or Wi-Fi which I have connected network, but Wi-Fi is down for my servers. Then application which you are trying to access that is not having any network is nothing but you cannot access it, right? Maybe network failures, maybe hardware components failures. But how do you handle from the failure? That is important. And next one is load distribution, load balancing. Yeah, whenever one user is accessing this, or 1 lakh or 1 million of the users are accessing that, the response time must be the same. Response time. That means whenever we hit the URL, what is the time that is taking to load the page? That's we say the response as a metric. But if the more users are accessing, especially these are all going to happen in the social networking sites, not social networking, e-commerce based applications. Maybe on the weekends, heavy load on the application, but weekdays that is less load. But how do you handle that situation? The load management. That is another important consideration whenever we are designing that application in the live environment. Suppose Ryzen technologies, we don't see that much load on an average, some frequency we have. But if it is the e-commerce application and especially the festival times and holidays times, we cannot predict what is the load that is going to have it on those days, right? But it should be handled. How do we handle that? How do we manage the load? That is load balancing patterns we need to use it. And finally, another important point if you are hosting this in the live environment, security is also another important constraint. Yeah, how do you protect application hosting in the live environment is one point, but how do you protect that application from the hackers or viruses or unauthenticated users are trying to access it? How do we protect from them is also another important thing. This is the main constraint, the security. Suppose I'm designing this one application which is having this like something the $1 million of the cost. Okay, I have implemented all the functionalities and the application is ready. But whenever I host that application to the live environment, within 1 week, my application hacked by the hackers. Then whatever that investment which I have done and whatever the stuff which I have made it for it, then that is no more usage, right? So before going to moving to the production, I need to think it from the hacker's point of view. whether they are able to hack it my application or not. We need to recruit some hacking teams. These are the positive hackers. They will help us. And we need to give that, some time for them, and as well as we need to give some money to test that all the hacking possibilities. Yes or no? Yeah, that is a high priority. Especially,
Yes, sir. Obviously correct.
yeah, especially banking domains or important transaction, the money-based transaction applications are all very, very important. Yeah, HTTPS, yes. So that's positive hackers. We need to have it where they can test about our application, and they will be having that offers. What is that offer? Suppose I'm giving this application before moving to the production. If you hack it, I will give that this much amount of additional amount. Suppose if you give the normal salary, they'll do that normal hacking tricks or algorithms which they have that. But if you give that offer, was if you hack this application which is given by that development team, if you hack it, I will give the some additional bonus to you. Then they will try to give that all other possible scenarios also, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the security is a high cost and the high attention is required before releasing that application to the production. Security is, so where it has to be blocked and who can access that, from which IP address that should be allowed. Any unauthenticated or some like internet providers, they block that some of the IP address publicly. Yes, if you are receiving the request from those IP address, we need to deny the request. Those kind of the rules that have been implemented or not, verification. And another point, security compliance is on the basis of the geographical region. Suppose if about our application is specific to that, something Aadhaar cards related application, that means only India users should access it. If any request which is coming to that application from other geolocation, it should not be allowed. Especially government applications. Yeah, on the basis of that application and application user data and the transaction data, how you are protecting is very, very important. Security is a major challenge. Just implementing that application, releasing to the outside is not the point, but how you are protecting that application from unauthenticated users or from the hackers, or from the, if it is Windows-based systems, especially the virus attacks also. So all those points that's required to consider whenever we are designing that application. But how does designing architecture that we have this is, that's we will talk it on this Monday. Yes, this is some consideration that have been explained with all these use cases. Yes, it takes some time to explain clearly about all this. Yeah, we'll talk it this high level architecture on Monday. Whether you are going to use it cloud or on premises doesn't matter. That this is the basic understanding required. If you are going to support that project or application, yes, databases, middleware components, proxy components, external load balancers components, networks, firewalls defining as security protection point of view, internal networks, external networks, that's we say the DMG zones and DNS configurations. All these points we have. So we'll talk at this architecture on Monday. So now the time is almost 11:15. It takes almost like 40-45 minutes for that. We will discuss that on the Monday, and then we'll continue the networking commands, which we are the spending some more commands. We'll try to conclude it. Then we'll talk at user management, one more section. Then we'll move into that shell scripting. Is it clear about this? Understanding application side some points today?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. Now, so far commands or Linux commands, whatever we are talking, that is within the system, right? But why do we need the system? Why do we need to know those Linux commands? Finally, in that system, about your application or database or middleware server or some server is running. But before going to setting up the server, you need to have that the users, you should know that the files management activities, you should know that like configuration files, how do you edit it, or if you would like to do some customization, how do you do that, or how to view the files, or how to install the packages, or how to start and stop the services. All these things which you are understanding through the Linux. But why do we need to learn the Linux is finally about your application related resources. That could be middleware service, that could be web services or the proxy services, or a database services, or the reporting services, or the monitoring services. These are all services are running finally on the virtual machine, which is having the Linux or Unix based operating system. Yeah, fine. So that's all from my side for today. So we have this one small concept, that is a high level architecture designing models, how that would be to handle all these scenarios, that is a high availability, failover, load balancing, and securities. That's architecture which we need to discuss. We'll conclude this one on Monday and we'll continue with the networking commands. Yeah, any queries, questions, please? Are you following this, everyone? If everyone is following, just please type this following in the chat window. Okay, about your issue with the background has been solved. That's really good news, because you are facing from last 3 or 4 days. Yeah, I see this Usha, Raghava, Sushma, Ajay. Good. Be active always in this chat window or in the discussions. That would be helpful. You will be, if you are active, then whenever I am discussing, I will get some more active. Okay, then let's present some more concept. But if I just following that, then we'll get the bore of this, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
be active and be response, and then it will be encouraging both sides. Yeah, thanks to all. I'm going to log off for today. We'll meet on Monday, the 9:40 sharply, and we'll continue understanding this high level talk teacher solutions, and then we'll move to the networks. Yeah, thank you all.